Hey everyone, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have the Autumn Bundles Inspiration Box. This was the September box for Brutus Monroe, and we're going to make 5 cards with it. As far as I know, it is still available, and I do have an unboxing, so I'll have that linked down below if you missed it. But I had gone ahead and stamped out a bunch of the images and colored them, and on this panel, which is it measures 4 inches by 5.5, I went ahead and stamped out the gourds a bunch of times. The stencil that comes in this kit is fabulous, so we're just going to go right out of the gate and do, I love this. I love how this one turned out. So I'm going to take some purple tape and I'm going to mask off areas where I'm afraid that I might get some ink, because we are going to be doing some ink blending. I just thought that this would be so cool with this stencil. And it's neat because this stencil also has an apple and a leaf and an acorn that will match up with, you know, each of the acorn images or the apple or the leaf on the other stamped images. So we're going to start off with some Slippery When Wet Simon Hurley ink, and I'm going to just blend that all over the stencil, and it'll put down this nice wash of like a yellowy, almost orange color. And then here I was thinking I would bring in my next color, but then I thought to make it easy on myself, we'll just go ahead and stick with the same color because I only have the one mini Ergo blending brush. And so I'm going to just make sure that I screwed up there, grabbed the Guppy. Meant to grab the Slippery When Wet, but it's fine. So we'll just go ahead and dip into there, and we'll ink blend all of our gourds using that same color, and then they'll all be done as far as that first color. Now we'll go in with our next color, which is the Guppy. It's a little bit darker orangey color. And then we'll move along and do the same thing, just working. We did our lightest and we're going to work up to our darkest. I'm going to end up grabbing 3 colors, but the Guppy is a nice like next step up from that Slippery When Wet. And you know, it looks really flat right here, but that's where those colors just, whew. And you could do just 2 colors. I think the 2 colors work really, really beautiful, but just wait till I bring in the 3rd color. And it's just neat. It's a fun way. You could color these if you wanted to, but oh my goodness, the blending is so cool. So here I'm going to bring in Traffic Cone. It's a nice orange color, and when I get that in there, it adds this glow to the bottom of those gourds that just has my heart all woo. I do suggest that if you're using purple tape, or anything really for that matter, that you try to wipe it off. I had put my fingers in it a few times, and so I do end up getting a few smudges, as careful as I tried to be for me. And if you watch me at all, y'all know I'm a little bit lazy. So yeah, it didn't work out for me in the end. I did have some smudges, but to be honest with you, it'll be fine, because I'm going to bring in splatter, and splatter will cover a multitude of errors. But I just love how all 3 of those colors together give you this gorgeous, I love it. So here I am bringing a Motto Sand Eraser, which will sort of bring or take away some of that color that I ended up getting on my panel. It doesn't do it perfectly, so like I said, that's why I bring in some splatter. And I'm going to color the little stems on all the gourds just with 1 brown Copic. And we'll bring in 3 Aqua pigments to splatter. That first one is part of the new Aqua pigments. It's called Cider. It's sort of like a darker orangey brown, or like a golden brown. It's really pretty. So I splatter that all over that background. Then I'll bring in some Gilded, which is a sparkly gold, and it's beautiful, and who doesn't love a little sparkle? A little bit of sparkle all over that. And then I'm also going to bring in brown, and that just brings in like that deeper tone, which is cool. So I am happy with how that turned out. My next step, I did want to do some of the embossing, so I'm going to bring in embossing ink, and I'm just going to put it all over the edges of the cardstock that I'm going to layer, which is some of the black cardstock that came in the kit. And I do have a couple pieces on the side. You'll see I have a white piece and a black piece in that upper right hand corner that I did do some embossing on, just to show you how different this embossing powder will look on both of those. It looks very golden on the black, and it looks almost rose gold on the white. So I love that you can almost get like a 2-tone out of this one embossing powder. And as far as I know, this is only available in the box. So I mean, they may bring it out later. I don't know if they'll do that, but so far it's only in the box. And I love it. All right, we also want to stamp out our sentiment with the same embossing powder, so I'm going to use a magic powder bag this time because I don't want powder sticking to places I don't want it. And I'll sweep away any of the excess with my little sweeper tool, and then we'll ink up our sentiment with the embossing ink, stamp that down, And then this is another thing I like about this embossing powder is it does a really good job on fine detail. So I just had a little bit of extra, so I'll brush away any extra and then I'll heat set that till that is smooth and melted. And like I said, it does a beautiful job with that fine detail. And then I'll trim down the excess with my guillotine trimmer. So I've got this nice sentiment panel. We're going to put some foam tape on the back of that. This is some black foam tape by Brutus Monroe. And then we'll start actually adhering all of our pieces to the card. And so I'll use some liquid glue to adhere down our panel to our this other card panel, which that one measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So that is the full front of an A2 size card. And then I'll adhere this down to some lunch bag cardstock that I had gone ahead and prepped as a card base. So that one I cut to 5 1/2 inches by 8 1/2 inches and scored it at 4 1/4. So it's a side folding A2 size card. I'll peel off the release paper on the back of my sentiment, and I am going to use my T-ruler because I just don't trust that I'll get that on there straight. And then we'll line that up and stick that down. And that's actually going to finish, well, no, it isn't going to finish off the card. I had forgotten that I had stamped out and sponged that first score just to see how it would look, and I loved it so much that I cut it out, and we'll put it on the inside of the card, and now we are finished with our very first card for the inspiration box. Love how that one turned out. For card number 2, we are going to make a slimline, so I had cut down some lunch bag cardstock to be 7 inches by 8 1/2 inches. This way I can score it at 3 1/2 inches. So when it's all folded up, it'll be 3 1/2 inches by 8 1/2 inches, and that will fit very nicely inside of a business size envelope. And that'll be our slimline. I also have a panel. I thought I was going to use it, but I chose not to. But I did use these panels. These were the foilables, and I had colored those up off camera. And then now I noticed as I was coloring them that they line up perfectly, and I thought, oh my goodness, that is awesome. I could make a slimline. And if you've watched me at all, I tend to like to take whatever it is I have and see how I can make that work on a slimline. And because these lined up so perfectly, and yeah, you'd probably be able to see the seam if you're looking closely, but who's really going to care? But it lines up great. So I'll just take some liquid glue and then I'll line up those little images and let that dry. And so I've got this nice long piece, and when it's all dry, I'll get ready to cut it down. But I did color these off screen because when I have a video like this where I'm trying to show you 5 cards and what you could do with a kit, I tend to do my coloring off screen. Otherwise, these videos would be like an hour long. All right, so I do want to cut this down. So I'm going to put this into my trimmer, and I'm going to end up cutting this down to be a little bit smaller on the long side so that it'll have a nice little lunch bag border. So I'm just going to trim this down to be 3 1/4 inches by 8 1/2 inches. So it'll fit perfectly all the way from top to bottom. And then I'll have a nice little border on the right hand side once I've trimmed that down. So I like that. And I feel like it just gives it that really fall look. Not only that, but the colors that I did color it give it that nice fall look as well. And then I took the leftover piece and trimmed that down to 1/2 inch pieces so that I could stick those on the inside of the card. I didn't really want to waste anything. I didn't use the panel that I cut off the bottom, but I can save that for something else, whatever I choose to, I guess. But I'll put those little borders on the inside of my card, and then I have plenty of room to write to my recipient. And then I'll take some liquid glue and adhere down my card panel to my card base. Yeah, again, like I said, you can see that seam a little bit, but how cool. And I checked all the panels work the same way, so if you really wanted to make them all slimline, you absolutely could. And then for the sentiment, I did the same thing that I did previously, just stamp that and emboss that onto some black. So I'll use my foam tape on the back of that as well. And I didn't make it go all the way across to completely cover the seam, but you sure could. And I did put a slight slant on my sentiment, and then I'll peel off the release paper and stick that down. It doesn't completely cover the seam, but it's on there, and I like it. And you could add some of the sequins from the kit, but I just love the way this looks the way it is. So that'll finish off card number 2. Card number 3 is another slimline. This time I cut down some of the cream cardstock, and I'm going to pull out the stencil from September. This is the September stencil of the month, and I am going to make this work on a slimline. I've actually done this before with this exact stencil. Even though this isn't one that I found that lines up easily or anything, you can you can actually easily manipulate it enough that it almost looks like it is. And then also, like I've said before, you can cover up areas where there's a seam. So I'll just pull out some Clear Skies ink. It's a nice pretty blue ink. And then I'm going to just sponge that all over my background. Just blend that pretty loosely so I'm not being real, you know, careful. Just some areas it's nice and light, some areas it's dark, and I like that variation. And then I'll pull off the stencil and all the pieces and move this down. And yes, I'm using my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station. As I use it more, I like it even more, so it has come in very, very handy. And then I'll use the ruler that comes with it just to kind of block off the area where it could overlap. And then I'll pull that off, and like I said before, yeah, you'll see a little bit of a seam there, but you won't once the card's all put together. And so now we're going to start actually adhering all of our pieces. We're going to figure out where we want them. I don't think I mentioned this before, but when I stamped all these images out, I stamped them using some Raven Detail ink, and I stamped them onto some alcohol marker cardstock, all by Brutus Monroe. And then I'm going to adhere this down to just a lunch bag panel. And I did make that a little bit smaller. That way it kind of almost looked like a ground, I suppose, on the bottom, but a very small amount because I didn't want that to be like the main center stage. And then I'll start gluing all of my pieces down. I love, you know, stamping out the images and coloring those ahead of time and then fussy cutting them out, which this didn't take any time, honestly, because it's just, I don't know, it's fun. I don't have to think about it a whole lot. And oftentimes when I'm coloring on screen, I'm, you know, constantly thinking about making sure that the caps are in the camera and all that works out. So I'm going to keep layering up these little nuts, kind of making them into a little pile. And then before I adhere my squirrel down, I'm going to do the same thing I did before with my sentiment. And then we'll attach that down up top. I just wanted to make sure that the squirrel would be able to cover the one edge. And we'll adhere that down with some liquid glue. I think that's such a cute sentiment, bundles of hugs. And I stamped out several squirrels, and lots of the nuts went nuts, stamping the nuts. I don't know why. I think I was inspired by our most recent camping trip we did. We saw all kinds of squirrels. We saw some little gray squirrels, little black squirrels, little brown squirrels. It was just cute. And so I made a bunch of little gray squirrels. And then I'll adhere this down to another lunch bag card base. And then I'll take another set of the nuts and another squirrel, and I'll just adhere those to the inside, just to add a little something to the inside. And save the other pieces for some of my other cards. You could take some of the sequins and put those on the outside. I didn't, but you absolutely could, or some other form of embellishment, but there it is. He looks so cute on his little pile of nuts. Card number 4 is going to use those leaf dies, and if time had been on my side, I would have made a bunch more cards with these little leaves because I absolutely love them. But they are available in the store, so I am definitely going to be using these again in the future because I just love the look of them. They're just so different than anything else I have in my stash. I'm going to make a shaker, so I have a piece of the glitter cardstock that I've cut down to 4 1/4 inches by 5.5 inches. I'm going to tape the leaves in place with some a little bit of purple tape and then run that through my die cutting machine. I was very aware of trying to make sure that I had enough border in between that I could use some foam strips. So I, didn't go too far to the side, and I didn't try to make them too close together, but I do have the rule of, odds. So there's all 5 leaves on there, and I will save the leaves to do something with because they just turned out so pretty. I'll put some liquid glue all over the back, and then I have a piece of acetate that I have trimmed down to fit that perfectly. I actually have 2 pieces. I'll use the second piece later. And then I'm going to double up some Derice foam strips because I want to make sure that I have plenty of room for my little shaker bits to move around. And then I'll also use some little foam squares on the center just to give it some, so it won't cave in the center. And I'll put those down, peel off all that release paper that is all over those, and then be very liberal with my sequin shaker mix because, a lot of that will end up going down to the bottom. So now I'll cover that with that second piece of acetate. That just makes it easier to be able to adhere to your piece, and then you don't have to worry about trying to make sure things are all straight. So I'll have the acetate that I used linked down below. I'll use a little bit of liquid glue on the back, just covering some of the areas. Obviously I need to be aware of not putting glue in where there would be see-through, because then you'll see it. And then I'll adhere that down to a cream card panel that measures all the same, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And then I'm going to adhere that down to another lunch bag card base. As you can tell, I love using the lunch bag for my fall cards. That stuff is so pretty. And then I did the sentiment the exact same way that I have all the others. So I'll adhere that down using some liquid glue. And then that's actually going to finish off our shaker. Super easy, and this one will go through the mail just fine, and those shaker elements all move around super freely in there. And very happy with that. For card number 5, we're going to take another one of those foilable panels, and we are going to sponge some Midnight Snack, which is a dark navy color, across the bottom, and we're going to make it ombre. Someone had mentioned in my unboxing, and I believe it was Wendy, that, you know, oh, how cool would that embossing powder be if you embossed it onto some navy cardstock? And I think she's 100% right. Although I didn't do it, I just thought it would be, oh yeah, she's right, it would be very beautiful. I did bring in some navy color, even though I didn't emboss on any of it, and I think that that navy really does make all that stuff pop, and it's just a beautiful addition to the colors that are already in this kit. We're actually going to be camping all this next week, and that was kind of just a spur of the moment thing that my husband decided, so I didn't, you know, if I had had more time, believe me, I'd have done a lot more with this kit. It's just absolutely beautiful. But there is a new kit out, the October kit, and I promise you, if you see it, you're going to want it. So be forewarned, either go check it out and get it now because it's going to sell out, or maybe don't go look at it if you're afraid you're going to need it. All right, so I did take some of those gold leaves that the orange leaves that I had cut out from the previous card. I'm going to attach a couple of those to the front of this card. That orange and that blue, since those are complementary colors, just go together so perfectly. And then we'll take some black foam tape, put that behind our little squirrel, and we'll attach him to the front. I do end up taking the rest of the leaves that I had from the previous card and actually attaching them to the inside of that previous card, so they look really nice on that inside of that shaker card. So I'll peel off all the release paper on our little squirrel, and then we'll attach him down. But yeah, I'm looking forward to doing some camping again this week, trying to get in as much as we can before it gets too cold and we just can't. I mean, we live in the South, but at some point we may have to stop camping until it gets a little warmer, but we're going to enjoy it while we can. I'll attach down my card panel to my card base, which is some more of that lunch bag cardstock. And then I am going to do the sentiment the exact same way that I have all the other sentiments. And then I'll trim that down, trying to figure out where I want it exactly. I'll give it a little bit of a slant edge. And then we'll attach that down with some liquid glue. You could put some foam tape behind it if you wanted to, since the squirrel had foam tape. But we'll attach that down kind of using our glass mat just to make sure things are on there fairly straight. And then we'll flip that over and trim off the excess. And then I do have one more set of nuts and a squirrel, and so we're going to put those on the inside of this card. It just went perfectly. And then I ended up using pretty much every element that I had colored and cut and everything like that. So that's actually going to finish off card number 5. So let me show you all 5 of the cards that I made today. I would love to know what you think of them. You know, maybe put down which one was your favorite. Like I've said before, that's always my favorite part about making all these, is hearing which ones you guys like the most. If you did like this video, I would appreciate you hitting the like button, and maybe even consider subscribing if you have not done so before. I typically have 3 to 4 videos a week, and I always appreciate all the love and support y'all leave. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.